Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is actually going to be a little bit different than anything I've done on this channel. Today we're going to focus on one scene out of one of my favorite horror movies and kind of talk about the special effects used. Today's movie that we're going to discuss is Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Killer Klowns from Outer Space came out in 1988 and was actually not a very popular film when it came out, but has recently kind of developed a cult following. I first found this movie on Netflix back when I was in high school, and I watched it and thought it was fantastic. I showed it to my family and I was like, you guys, you have to watch this movie. It's ridiculous, it's funny, it's scary, it's great. And since then, it's actually become one of my favorite horror movies. And the scene I want to talk about today is actually the end sequence of the movie where the heroes are faced with the Klownzilla, the giant clown that kind of rules over all the other smaller killer clowns. A little bit of backstory on the production: Killer Klowns actually had a $2 million budget. $2 million. Which is way higher than I would have anticipated. It's kind of considered a cheaper, like, low-end horror movie. And apparently a lot of that went into, like, the post-production and just hiring the people. A lot of the special effects were actually very low budget and kind of thought of on a whim. But the most expensive prop used was actually the popcorn gun that they wanted to rig to actually shoot out popcorn. And that gun cost them $7,000, and it broke after its first use. Thankfully, they got the shots that they needed, but they weren't even able to use it again. And the creators actually agreed that maybe they shouldn't have spent $7,000 on a gun that was only going to be able to work once. The special effects artist slash visual artist is actually Gene Warren, and he actually helped create a lot of the different, like, practical effects that were used on set, and he actually did a lot of the camera work for some of the Killer Clown scenes. One thing this movie definitely utilizes is the use of perspective shots. Perspective shots are basically whenever something is close to the camera and you have the actors farther away from the camera, making whatever is in the foreground seem way bigger than it actually is. They definitely take advantage of this whenever they're inside of the spaceship, kind of going through all these different crazy, like, tunnels and things. A lot of those shots were perspective shots. Along perspective shots, they actually used a lot of mini sets and different mini props, such as, like, mini platforms to stand on to make the clowns look bigger, and mini cars that they could use to have the clowns pick up and destroy, because, you know, like, regular people can't pick up and destroy cars. Another interesting thing I found about a lot of these scenes is the use of matte paintings for the backgrounds. A lot of the backgrounds where you see the clowns inside of the tent, or the big overshot where you see the tent kind of spinning and trying to fly away, is actually a completely painted matte background that they brought in post-production. Now, one of my favorite parts of this movie is the end with the Klownzilla, which is a giant marionette clown that descends from the ceiling. All the other clowns seem to be afraid of this thing, so you kind of know that it's either, like, the leader, or at least, like, the big monster that no one wants to mess with. And it kind of comes down from the ceiling and breaks off of its strings and starts to go after our heroes. Now, they actually originally wanted to use stop motion to do this clown scene, but they just didn't have the budget or the time for it, so they ended up having to go with a lot of those perspective shots with the mini sets. Charles Chiodo, who's one of the three brothers who created the Killer Clown from Outer Space movie, actually plays Klownzilla, so that he was actually in costume. And because they decided to not go with the stop motion, they decided that trying to do a complete marionette scene with the strings attached to the costume would be a little too difficult, which is why you actually see the monster break its strings off in the beginning. That way he didn't have those kind of constraining his movements. And the platform we see him standing on originally, which is the platform we see earlier with our heroes on it, is a smaller version to make him look way bigger than he is. So this entire scene is a lot of perspective shots, considering the fact that Charles is the same size as the other actors. They had to shoot in different ways, putting him more in the foreground, giving the illusion that he was way bigger. Now, Klownzilla, being so much larger than all the other clowns, moves in the way you would expect a giant monster to move. They're very slow, heavy kind of movements that he does. And the way that they accomplished this was using accelerated frame rates. This is something that Gene Warren specializes in, making him the perfect man for the job. And what accelerated frame rates are is shooting at a higher frame rate than normal and then slowing it down to make the movements look a lot slower and heavier. And we see this happening whenever Klownzilla is banging on top of the ice cream truck. The movements make it feel like he's got really heavy, big arms, but in actuality, Charles was pounding very rapidly on top of this van, and they just slowed it down to kind of make it look like these big swinging motions. And this is a really cool effect that you see kind of throughout the movie, where Gene Warren would kind of mess with the frame rates. There's a scene earlier on with a car chase that they actually weren't allowed to speed on the residential road, so Gene had to kind of go in post-production and speed up the film to make this chase look a little more exciting. So Gene really knew what he was doing whenever he decided to do these accelerated frame rates, and they do look beautiful throughout the whole movie. You never really get the sense that you're watching a sped up or slowed down clip, which I appreciate because that would kind of take you out of the moment. We see another use of perspective shots whenever Dave Hansen is picked up by Klownzilla and has to fight for his life. Now, whenever we see him getting picked up, that's actually just a doll that Charles is holding that's very small to make Charles look a little bit bigger. But whenever it's close up and we see Dave fighting with the clown, that's actually a giant hand that they fabricated for him to stand in to make it look like he's being held. And whenever he's kind of fighting with the head, that's actually just a puppet that they created, so there's no actor actually standing in front of him. And this entire scene was actually set up by the Chiodo brothers. They actually kind of were more hands-off when it came to the set design and the production design, but this was the one scene that they really had visualized for this movie and decided this is the one that we have to build. And it's a really fun setup. It's almost like a giant fun house. It kind of makes you think of those big playhouses you would go to as a kid, and it's a really fun scene to have like a final boss battle. But after Dave successfully pops the nose of Klownzilla, the tent is starting to spin off, the spaceship is about to leave Earth because they've been caught, and with Klownzilla killed, the spaceship actually ends up exploding, and you're left to believe that Dave and the two brothers from the ice cream truck perished in the explosion. The two brothers who own the ice cream truck actually do end up surviving by hiding out in the freezer of the truck, but in the original script, Dave the cop was actually supposed to die with the ship. But after showing this to audiences, they were like, you know what, this movie's really fun and upbeat, why don't we have a fun, upbeat ending as well? So Dave does end up surviving the explosion, and everything is presumed to be okay. The movie ends with our three heroes looking up into the sky, contemplating whether or not their battle is truly over, just to be hit in the face with 3 pies, which is a great ending to a great movie. So yeah, that's a little bit of the behind the scenes on how they were able to do the Klownzilla scene of Killer Klowns from Outer Space. I plan on doing a couple more of these videos where I talk about specific scenes. They're probably going to be from more 80s horror movies, just because that's whenever practical effects really took hold, and I find those really interesting, especially to see how they kind of would troubleshoot and come up with different ideas. But I hope you liked this video, even though it was a little bit shorter. If you did, leave a comment down below, or go over to my What a Horror Instagram. I'm going to be making a post to go along with this video as well. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more. And until next time, stay spooky.